morning, world. Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon.
Great morning, world. Bear with me 1 second, streaming to 5 locations right now. So we just have to make sure we know what we're doing, but we are live and recording this episode of the Rise Up with Dragon show. Give me 1 second and we are good. So great morning, world. Great morning, Facebook, YouTube, eventually Instagram, LinkedIn, and Clubhouse. We got the Clubhouse room rocking as well, and you guys are all welcome to come. We're gonna do the Rise Up here. You know, it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall, you know, in TV, where they kind of look at the screen and talk to people. What's interesting about a podcast is that you don't have the ability to interact with the person because you're listening to a recording of a podcast. So my podcast found on iTunes at Rise Up with Dragon. You know, I load them. I have 48 episodes. Actually, Chicken's sitting right next to me as always. What's up, Chicken?
Hello, my darling.
I love that. We have such a great morning together. She's part of my morning Rise Up. And as always, today's episode is sponsored by Karma Mind, the world's most effective meditation podcast.
That's a great ad.
That's right. I've made a decision a long time ago as this started to grow that I'm going to refrain from just throwing all these advertisements on there. So if I am going to, I'm going to advertise one of my friends or my family. But Chicken, this will be my 40. This actually will represent my 50th episode because I have 2 more loading. So I'm going to be 50 this year, and this is my 50th episode.
Pretty cool.
So pretty cool. Also really, really cool, both to the Clubhouse world and to the Rise Up with Dragon, the Dragon Nation. I've got some killer guests coming up. First of all, I've got an amazing, you know, everybody knows that I'm very much into, you know, forming transformational habits and things like this. I speak a lot about that on this show. So I've got Tamsin Astor, who wrote a book. She's like, I forget how she I'm going to speak to her in full length, and I just got her book, but she wrote an entire book on habit forming. She's going to be with us Friday next week. And then we have Dr. Malcolm Fulmer. What did you say?
Hopefully he's not listening to
Hey, you got to understand when my South African wife here speaks, sometimes I have to get another check on
Dr. Russell Fulmer.
So I just got the first name wrong.
He's a professor at Northwestern University.
So we've got one of the foremost authorities on going back and evaluating how we're impacted by our childhood. And Dr. Russell Fulmer, I'm going to actually interview him, so he'll be on video and on the in Clubhouse and everything. So that is going to be rocking. And then after that, we're going to have an interview with the amazing best-selling author and just complete rock star, Jim Quick.
Yes,
So we've got a lot of fun stuff coming to the Rise Up with Dragon show. So I see people coming in, and we're live on the Facebook, so people can watch it there and they can comment, and eventually we're going to promote people up in the Clubhouse, and we're going to engage and have a little after party. So lots of fun stuff happening. And as a quick reminder, we just blew up a Clubhouse room yesterday, and that's Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And that's that new room that I'm hosting with the amazing Dan Valentine and also big time leaders. And I see some of those leaders here. You know, I see Megan Cody here. I mean, just God, everybody that's in the Clubhouse room, you guys should all follow each other. And definitely jump in there and follow Megan. And Megan's got some great stuff on her Facebook and her Instagram and stuff. Megan, I know you're listening in Clubhouse. I watch it. And a lot of our coaches have crushes on Megan, don't they?
Oh my gosh. I have a crush on her.
And Chicken has a crush on her as well. So follow Megan and hit the bell next to her, because I know she's going to interact with us and on those Thursdays. But don't miss that next week. It's going to blow up, and you get an opportunity to speak to like the top leaders and just crushers of the universe. So great morning, everybody. Today, the Rise Up is called The Flow Burglar. And I'm going to jump right into it because Dragon wrote a little bit more than usual today. But I started off, this was the thought that kind of like stimulated this. And that's how my journaling goes. A lot of my book, and my book is just crushing. I can't wait. I made a massive breakthrough. When you write a book, everybody, it's very, very frustrating when you first start writing a book because you think it's amazing, but then somebody else reads it and says, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. But then all of a sudden you figure it out and the chapters fall into place and you start saying, wow, this is going to be awesome. So big shout out to LA, who is my editor. And, thank you so much, LA, for pretending that some of the stuff that I wrote was good until you helped me and made it awesome. So today's the Flow Burglar. So here's how it starts. So first of all, I was just thinking, and I posted this on my social media this morning. I said, do you believe that we are all connected? So just embrace that for a second. Do you? Do you believe that we're all connected? And I think for the most part, people would say yes to that, right? But I think that's kind of like a apprehensive yes, or a yes that doesn't have like a lot of fact checking, because we don't always act like that. So, one of the things that I identified is that one challenge that we all face that actually is the cause of much of our suffering is the thought and belief that we are separate. We are all separate, right? Our separate self is separate from others and not connected. So think about that for a second. Do you carry that thought and belief that you are separate from one another? In that space of that separateness lies the fertile ground that gives rise to comparison. Think about that for a second. If we did not ever think that we were separate from one another, the word comparison wouldn't even exist, right? Why would you even need to compare yourself, which gives rise to a comparative reality, which is the cause of a lot of our suffering, if you didn't ever think that we were separate? So I thought that was pretty heavy. And when I wrote that, everything flowed into place for this journal entry. So it gives rise to that idea of comparison. And comparison is the main ingredient of a comparative reality. I thought that was pretty cool. So if you're going to bake a comparative reality cake, one of the main ingredients is comparison. And this is the atmosphere. Pretty heavy, right? Here's the comparison cake. Gives rise to the comparison atmosphere. And in that atmosphere is where blame, shame, and justification exists. And it thrives, meaning it gets fed. So the next time somebody criticizes you or blames you or knocks you down, just stop for a second, right? Chicken, what do we call, what is the scientific term of stop, challenge, choose? CBT?
Yes.
Cognitive behavioral therapy. So Dr. Anderson talks about stop, challenge, choose, but it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. So the next time somebody, blames you, shames you, or knocks you down, before you either get bummed out, feel inferior, or fight back, stand up for yourself, right? Those are the things that we do in reaction. Consider where this offering is coming from. Consider for a moment, and I'm not telling you to do this because a lot of people fight me on this idea of forgiveness, right? But just consider for a moment the idea of forgiving them, right? Thinking for just a second, just opening up that idea of forgiving them, for they know not what they do. That's a really, really cool tool to take with you today. When somebody offers you something in the form of criticism, and I'm going to tell you a story today, just try opening yourself. That's an above the line philosophy, to just become open, right? It doesn't mean you have to commit to it, but just commit to the idea of being open to forgiving them, for they know not what they do. So thinking you are just as smart or just as great as someone else, by the way, is still comparison. Sweetie, think about that for a second. If you think, because we're talking about the other end of it now, if you think that you are just as smart or just as great as someone else, which I think is pretty much what we've been taught to do, right? That's still comparison, right? If I look at somebody and I go, I'm just as good as them, because that's what I was taught. You can do anything you can. You're just as good. Nobody's better than you. That's still comparison.
Or if they can do it, I can do it.
But that's comparison,
Yeah.
right? So as long as you continue to compare, you suffer from the fear of coming up short, as well as remain in a constant state of isolation and alienation. Oof. Chicken, by the way, is starting to do starting to do some of these rise ups with her amazing voice, and it's going to come through Karma Mind. And what else?
Insight Timer. So I will share my profile with everybody. You can follow me on there and listen to my stuff.
Insight Timer. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but Insight Timer is the biggest as far as an app goes. It's even bigger than Calm, right?
Now, yeah.
Where people go to hear about meditations and stuff. So the key lies in the curious compassion. I want you to write that down. If you're driving, don't do that. But the key lies in the curious compassion for others rather than comparison. Now, think about the difference in those words. They sound very similar. Compassion and comparison. So what I'm inviting you to do today is to just consider replacing the word comparison with the word compassion. Your entire life will begin to change when you replace the word comparison with compassion. So just replace the words and you remove yourself from the mental prison of that comparison. So that was what I wrote in the beginning, and that gave rise to remembering this story, and that's what I want to share with you today. So just as a reminder, we're going to jump in after this Rise Up. We're going to jump into the Clubhouse room, and we'll be able to interact, and we'll be able to talk about this till the top of the hour. So this is called the Flow Burglar. Now, a lot of people that follow the Dragon Nation knows about the Flow Burglar, but it's in a little bit of a different tense today. So experienced an offering the other day, and I'm reading this. This is my journal entry because I want to read it raw, just like it came out. And by the way, you'll notice that my background today is different. I'm actually in the Chicken's podcast studio today because our stepmother's here, and she doesn't like any of the beds where we live except for the one that my son sleeps in sometimes in my podcast studio. So we always give that to her. And she was like, no, I don't want to take you away from your Rise Up. And I go, no problem. I'll use the cherry blossom. So anyway, I experienced an offering of negativity the other day. I haven't posted judgment on it, right? Hey, I got a great morning from Anna Lee. What's up, Anna Lee? Who's lost like 150 pounds. Amazing. So this offering of negativity the other day came from me basically doing a fun, dragon style social media post. And I got great feedback. Like, those posts that you put up. I mean, why would you put up a post? We put up posts. Actually, that's another area that comparison lives. But I put up a post just like you because I wanted to get great feedback and I wanted to feel like I mattered, right? Be significant. And it felt great, So that whole self-worth thing was like riding high. I was excited about it. But sure enough, one person. Isn't it interesting how one person out of many has a the tendency of just coming in and say, well, not everybody liked it. So sure enough, one person found something that I said offensive and decided to forego. This was my perception. She decided to forego her Sunday. It happened on a Sunday. She decided to forego her Sunday with her family and come after me, right? It was a really, really interesting experience. And she basically, reacted to this with a completely shocking, way. I mean, like everybody else was saying, this was great. And they were saying, thank you for it and all that. So keep in mind, first of all, that on that day, for all of you that are, seekers of the happier, healthier, and wealthier, Chicken and I are like rocking our program perfectly. So I was like in fat burn and I was like feeling really, really good. So anyway, she came at me on a day that I was like at my best, right? So that was not going to work out well for her, but also, I didn't react the way that the typical person did. So I was on day 5 of that. I was actually in fat burn. So, I feel great, confident, clear-headed, which helps. And that's a little side note right there. If you're not in a good physical and chemical and mental state, your response system is going to be skewed, right? You might be a little bit more sensitive and defensive. So just as a side note, you can know what I'm about to share with you, but if you don't actually get in that state, great morning, Tanya, you're going to miss it. Oh, by the way, to the Clubhouse world. I learned something new on Clubhouse yesterday. Chicken, you're going to like this. I learned that there's very, very, few ways of communicating, but once people come into the speaking queue, they have the ability to be muted or unmuted. And there's only one way to applaud when somebody is saying something that you like. They just unmute and mute, unmute and mute. They flicker their mute. I think that's so funny because we're in Clubhouse right now and it's awesome, right? People can listen and they're going to be able to ask questions and interact, but they don't have the ability to say anything unless they begin. So and then you get brought up to the queue, and while someone's talking, like you can't raise your hand or anything like that when you're in the speaking queue. So they just like Morse code flicker,
That's cute.
Yeah, Dan Valentine was the one that figured that out. So in any case, I was in really, really good shape when this woman offered this, and that helped me stay above the line. However, an attack is an attack, like I don't care how rock solid you are, you always feel that first impression of an attack, and it does throw you off for a moment, doesn't it? Right? So anyway, this probably, kind, I'm going to say probably kind individual, because I didn't know her, but I just assume, didn't appreciate an analogy I gave in jest, as Dragon tends to do sometimes. And I even wrote in my journal entry, laugh out loud, right? So remember, everybody, I'm a WIP, right? And there's no H in that. I'm a WIP, which means I'm a work in progress. I'm not seeking perfection, but progress, and I'm open to improvement. If somebody wants to debate something, Dragon's not the right person to talk to, because I will listen to you and I will consider that you might be right. So if you're seeking a debate, you need someone to actually want to debate you. So she began basically with commenting, with criticism against what I said, which I, basically call a mild to moderate attack. That was the first phase of it. And I don't know if anybody's ever had a mild to moderate attack. And, leave space for constructive criticism. So I replied and said, from her mild and moderate attack, remember, we're talking about how we respond to things here. And those things are what we call flow burglars. And I'm going to entertain that in a second. So I replied to her and I said, thank you for your input. Then admitted I could use different words. I said that to her. I said, you're right. I could have used different words, and I agreed to work on myself, And Chicken hates that. Whenever I talk like that to people, sometimes Chicken will be like, no, that's screwed up. Yeah, screw that. Let's fight her. And I'm like, that's not the way. As a matter of fact, if Chicken walks in the room and she's looking for a fight, she hates it, because I'm like, you know what, sweetie, you're right. I can see what I did wrong there, and I'm going to work at it. She's like, no, that's not what I want. I want to fight. Anyway, so I said that I appreciated her insight. That was my response. She didn't like that at all. So she then took that mild to moderate attack and she took it to the next step, and she actually shared my post on her page, and then she took the liberty to take the fight to the streets, right? That's what I call taking the fights to the streets. So she actually took my post and shared it on her page. Like, imagine taking the time to take something that bothered you and not get a negative response from that person, and then still take it to the streets by putting it on your post, and then, taking it there saying, does everybody agree, right? I like that idea of saying, take it to the streets. Where am I? And so the next comment was not about what I said, but against me as a person. So now she began to attack. She went to that next phase in the streets and attacked me as a person, saying some mean things about me being mentally ill, she said. Chicken's looking at me right like, who did this? Who did this? So saying that I was mentally ill and something of a joke, etc. Now, when you're listening to this, Dragon Nation, Chicken Nation, you're probably conjuring up these feelings of that she's a bad person. I want you to stop yourself and just try that idea of forgiving her for she knows not what she does. I'm not thinking that what she's doing is bad. I'm wondering why she needed to do that, because it has nothing to do with me, right? So anyway, she started to go after me personally, and she didn't even know me, right? Now, she did this in response to me saying that I appreciate your insight. So she probably thought that I was like patronizing her or something. Anyway, so you all know me, and I mean no harm, and I try to make sure that's part of my brand and how I carry myself. I never mean to do harm to others, So how does JC react to this, like in the streets attack, in a solution focused way rather than a conflictive, problem focused way, And there's a great book about this, by the way, if you ever want to read it. It's called Change the Conversation. Great book. It just talks about solution focused rather than problem focused. So I share this with you because these things happen to all of you, all of those of you especially that, drop your fists of fear. Think about what that means. Those of you that drop your fists of fear today. You should not carry your fists to fight things that you're adverse to. Fight for the things that you want in life, right? I always say put up your dukes. Your fists that should be up should carry your what and your why. But drop your fists of fear and fists of fury. I mean, there is a time for that, but this was not it. So for those of you that live out loud and and decided to drop your fists of fear with the potential responses of negativity, meaning detach from the outcome, and jump into that realm of living out loud. Like those of you that live out loud on social media with good intentions and it's heart driven and you've harmonized your brain and your heart. Remember, somebody like this, a flow burglar, what I'm about to talk to, they're not harmonizing their brain and their heart like you have before. And sometimes we do this unconsciously. This is coming from your brain. You're not harmonizing. So remember, I said this on a previous podcast, and this comes from Heart Math. Put your hand on your heart when you're talking, and it just automatically increases the chances of harmonizing your brain and your heart. So for those of you that have decided to do this, I just want to show you that there is a really, really cool way to grow and learn and potentially help others rise up when you get attacked. So not that we can all serve, everybody, right? But we'd like to at least remain in an opportunistic service to all. So here's what I mean by that. Like, I don't go out there with this podcast, with the Clubhouse and all this. I'm not trying to help all of you. I'm just trying to be somebody that could offer help. It's up to you whether or not you like this podcast, you like, my interviews, you like my Clubhouse rooms. That's up to you. By the way, the people that are in Clubhouse, if this is vibing with you, I'm just going to ask you, remember, I'm going to invite people to speak, so you can start raising your hand to create that queue, because we're coming close to the end. But also push that plus sign if you want to share this conversation with someone that might need it. Push the plus sign. You can ping people into this room. Basically says, hey, we're in this room. And then also push the plus sign, and on the top right, you'll see share link, and you can actually share that link on your social media channels and then bring people into this room, which is really fun. So anyway, are you feeling me? Are you with me? So basically, we're, and it also said, P.S., this particular individual is one of those souls, just like you and I, right, that maybe a great person that just doesn't know what they're doing. So, I just wanted to make sure that I was curiously compassionate with her. So, what I'm looking for is I'm just looking for this moment where we create a better response system. So the first thing I want to do is I want to identify what this kind of person is and how they fit into the whole mix, right? So I call these instances, now it can be a person or an instance, right? But I call these instances and people, I call them flow burglars. Now, that's a Dragon original. Nobody's ever said that before. So when somebody says flow burglar, they got it from Dragon. Now, I've spent about 8 years studying the science of flow and the flow state, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But a flow burglar is somebody that cramps your style. Like when you're riding high, and that's typically when we or somebody else or universe will have a tendency of cramping your style. So I call them flow burglars, as they are here in the universe to try to knock you out of your flow and state of what I call the calm, right? So in my book, I use something similar to the idea of achieving flow, but I call it the calm, and I just love it. So if you've learned about the flow state, and if you haven't, this will change you, just rock your whole world. If you've learned about the flow state from this amazing scientist, and I don't know how to say his name right, but his name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Anyway, yeah, I mean, literally, his last name is Csikszentmihalyi. But you just look for the science of flow, or from Dr. Kotler, who speaks about it, and he talks about hacking flow. It's awesome. You'll better understand the amazing science of how humans, all of us, you and I, have the ability to enter a state of flow where all things are working effortlessly, right? And there's just what I call effortless awesomeness. So that's the place we want to go, and sometimes we find ourselves in it. And if you learn more about that, you'll learn how to hack it and jump into it. So we begin in that, with resistance and struggle to get into the flow state. We always begin with some sort of conflict, resistance, or struggle, and then we overcome it. This is how you get into a flow state. I'm not going to go deep into it. We proactively overcome it, and we advance this highly productive state of physical and mental harmony, right? And I just showed you a way that you can actually harmonize your brain and your heart, thanks to heart math, #HeartMath, which I didn't know about until my friend Howie Craw told me about that. And I see he's in the Clubhouse right now. He's in the club. So basically, that's that prize that we all seek. But think about it. Here's an interesting thought right now, because I'm going to give you a way of looking at flow burglars and conflict a different way. Think about it. There's no way of getting in the flow state. I just told you it begins with struggle and conflict and proactively releasing from it and overcoming it. And that's how you pass go and keep and collect $200 and get in this flow state. So when you learn about hacking flow, that's what you'll learn. So if you think about it, something that provides struggle, conflict, and adversity is actually part of what you need to get into flow. So now you start to look at flow burglars or anything like that, in a different way. So think about it. This nice human probably looked at me as a flow burglar. Isn't that interesting? I'm looking at her and identifying her as a flow burglar, but she's looking at me and my comment. So I have to understand that. And that's where I come above the line and take responsibility. Maybe I'm the flow burglar. Have you ever wondered that? When you get in that defensive system and you're looking at somebody else that's accusing you of something, you're looking at them and you're saying, they're the victim, I didn't do anything wrong. But maybe you're the victim by just doing that, and you're in this state of comparison. Remember what we talked about with that? And maybe you are the one that triggered them. If you ever want to read something that there's a really, really great fable out there called The Cookie Thief. I'm not going to read it right now, but just go look it up, Google it, and read The Cookie Thief. And that's about somebody thinking that somebody was the bad guy and then realizing that it was actually them. So think about it. She might have actually thought that I was the flow burglar during that, and I, gave her the bad day. So what do I do on this battlefield, folks? That's what I want to do. I want to help you out with that. What is the optimal path of least resistance and prime resolution for this? So ever notice the word solution, by the way? This was just a side note. Write down the word resolution, and you'll see that the word solution is in there. So yeah, it makes sense to have a solution focus. And sometimes, as I said, might be you, right? So solution is in the word resolution, by the way. So first, I forgave her. I forgave her knowing that we are the same, right? Remember that post I put up today? Are we different, or are we connected, or are we the same? Are we different? So first, I forgave her knowing that we are the same. And I experienced that compassion for how we all tend, right? So I even the playing field. So I experienced that compassion for the fact that we all tend to react to our program concepts and minds. It's not our fault. It's our program, it's our Intel processor, our analytical mind, our concepts, and our perceptions are all controlled by our program mind, which, as you guys know in the Dragon Nation, is programmed by your mother, father, teacher, preacher, right? So I chose in that moment to be kind versus right. So that's what curious compassion is. I chose to be kind versus right. So now you guys are starting to maybe shift your feelings and think a little bit compassionately about this person that you thought was a villain at first, right? So I chose to be kind versus right, and I placed myself in service to her and others rather than met them on the battlefield. And I was looking to seek a solution and say, this is what I said to her after that primal attack, right? I said, I understand your point. So I sought to understand her. I understand your point, and I thank you for pointing that out to me. And the truth is, everybody, I did. I was really excited about that. So I understand your point, and thanks for pointing it out to me. I can see how I could have been more empathetic to others and others in the words that I chose. So I will work on it. Now, please share with me, this is what I asked, so I'm seeking a resolution. Now, please share with me how you and I can work together and get this thing solved, right? So that's what I said. And she's probably like, man, she probably even hated me more. So a solution offering or resolution so everyone can go back to the things that matter most. Now, I didn't want to say, hey, you sure have a lot of free time. I didn't want to attack her back. I just wanted to say, hey, I would like to, have a solution-focused conversation so we can go back. Now, guys, I know a lot of you are thinking like, how the hell does he manage to do this? It's not easy, but I've been practicing for a long, long time. So you guys know I always introduce myself as Dr. JC, recovering bullshit artist. I've been clean for 14 years now. So why do I share this with everybody today? Because there are flow burglars out there, and you guys know them, and you might actually be one of them, right? So that's something that you need to understand. So we need to learn this idea of stopping, challenging, and choosing. And in my book, I talk about walking around things and looking at everything holographically, and just becoming more compassionate. Remember, removing the word comparison, which is the battlefield, the grounds, the fertile ground for argument. Right? I'm right, you're wrong, or anything. I'm better, you're worse. You're not better than me. So choosing to be compassionate and solution focused rather than problem focused, and create a better energy for others and yourself today. So yes, you can have a great day every day if you put this to work and potentially help others do the same. So that is, of course, unless you or they have other plans. Isn't that interesting? I just said you and I and they can have a great day every day if we practice this, unless they have other plans. And the reason why I put that in there is you will come across versions of yourself and others that don't want to resolve. Sometimes people want to fight, and they're in that conscious reality where they think like, this is what I want today. Just like you want to eat a piece of pizza, a donut, or something like that and get off your program. So for the record, that particular flow burglar I had the blessing of meeting the other day, she has not yet decided to give up her position. She's still protecting her position. So I'm no longer aware of her because, I did my thing, and, I'm no longer aware of her other than sharing this with you. And, my focus and actions and her focus and actions, I have no idea what's going on there, but I did forgive her, and I thanked her for this insight and this rise up, right? This rise up is actually due to her. So if you guys enjoyed this rise up as I close, then I'm going to encourage you to thank her as well and forgive her as well, because without that, we would not have this. So great morning, everybody. Hope everybody has a great day. Hope this kind of helps you unlock yourself and release yourself from the mental prison that we have a tendency of living in. Remember, you can follow the podcast at Rise Up with Dragon on iTunes. To find me on Clubhouse, you can find me at Make Sense. And then also on Instagram, where my DM is always open. That is at Rise Up with Dragon. So love and appreciate all of you. Love my chicken, love my family, love the things that matter most. And I love the idea that today we can all expect the possibility of greatness. So everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we are going to go out with my close.